So topic 6, we're looking at product, the first of our 4 Ps. As part of that, we're going to look at the product life cycle, the Boston matrix, product portfolio, and product differentiation. So the marketing function, what we're looking at, marketing, part of its job is to produce a distinctive product. This can define whether we're successful or whether we potentially fail. So we've got to find a unique selling point which helps the product stand out. If the product is one of many in a highly competitive market, any form of uniqueness will be valuable. So you've got to think of that in the context of what we're talking about now. So the first part of this presentation then, the product life cycle. Regardless of the value mix, so remember we looked at whether we decided function was the most important part of a product, whether it was aesthetics or whether it was price, all products go through a life cycle. They are launched, hopefully they increase in popularity, and eventually they are replaced by new products or they naturally decline. You've got to think things like Coca-Cola, for instance. That was invented in the late 1980s, but it's still going strong. So it's still in the maturity phase. So you could argue that at some point it might decline, but Coke have introduced lots of different flavours that haven't lasted as long. So we have to think about at what stages all these different things occur. So the product life cycle describes the stages a product goes through from when it was first thought of until it was finally removed from the market. Not all products reach the final stage, as I said about Coca-Cola. So let's go through all the different stages then. So as we see at the beginning, introduction, relatively slow growth in terms of sales, speeding up much quicker in the growth stage, becoming more stagnant, leveling out in the maturity stage. After the maturity stage, we can either extend the life cycle of our products or they will eventually go into decline. A little video then. I will put the link to this video in the description. So if you want to link to it, because it's someone else's video, I don't want to take credit for it, so I'll put a link in the description of this video to the video that I'm about to show you here. So the main stages of the product life cycle then: introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. Let's look at those individually. So during the introduction stage, the research and the development will have been undertaken to discover whether our product meets the customer's needs. The launch of a product will take place either in one particular part of the country, or it could be nationally, or rarely we might launch something internationally all at once. Initial sales may well be slow until the customer has tried the product and any marketing activity, so any adverts, any promotions, have had time to build interest. There is often a reluctance on behalf of consumers to try anything new or change from the brand they are used to, so it's difficult in the introduction stage to get new customers. It's often at this stage of the life cycle that products might actually fail, so they end up becoming nowhere. So there's also going to be a low level of sales. Because there's a low level of sales, we might have low capacity utilization. So we might have a factory, but we're not making very much in that factory because not very many people are buying our product. So if you remember back to last year, that might mean that there's a higher unit cost. This high unit cost and the low sales might mean that there's a negative cash flow, so more money is leaving the business than is coming into it. What do we do in terms of the marketing mix then? What are our relevant strategies at this stage? Well, sufficient market research to ensure that the product continues or actually meets the needs of the consumer. Depending on the nature of the product, the pricing will include introductory offers to encourage customers to try it. So it might be that there's a cheaper price, so penetration pricing, for instance. We might occasionally, because the research costs are very high and therefore the product will have high costs at the beginning, it might be that we have a very high price when the product is very first launched. Advertising will be informative. There'll be a lot of the promotional spending will be high to create awareness of the product, to inform people of the product, but that will be very much informative. So this is what the product does, telling people that it's around, that the product exists. Distribution channels will be low, though increasing sales outlets will be a priority, so there won't be very many places you can buy our product from, possibly. And if you recall back to different types or what makes people buy products, the different types of consumers, this is when businesses try to get the early adopters to get the product well known. So they might be the people who write reviews, they might be the people who write blogs to let other people find out about that product. Next stage then, growth. So once customers are fully aware of the new product, the sales are likely to grow much more quickly. Word of mouth and continued promotion may enhance sales further. If products can reach this stage and achieve growth, the product now is much more likely to succeed. The rate of growth in sales will depend on the nature of the product and the amount of alternatives or competition in the market. So the market is expanding, but there's more likely to be competitors. Now there's going to be a rise in capacity utilization because we're selling more. So if you remember, that rise in capacity utilization might mean that we're able to either make more profit or we might choose to reduce our price. Cash flow at this stage may well start to become positive as well. So what are our marketing strategies then? Well, modifications may be made after initial feedback. So we might change the product because people have told us it doesn't do this or it should do that. In a competitive market, pricing will have to reflect the market price, so what people are willing to pay, unless your product has a highly distinctive edge, which means people will pay a premium price for it, they'll pay more for it. Distribution is now much more widespread and therefore additional channels, so more people, more places to distribute your product might be necessary. Informative advertising may continue, but a move to competitive and persuasive style of advertising is likely. So it might be that you tell customers what isn't so good about your competitor, or trying to persuade them to buy yours over someone else's, rather than just informing them that the product exists, which is what we did in the introduction stage. Okay, the next stage, maturity, or you might see it called the saturation stage. So the slower growth as rivals enter the market. This means there's more competition, so there might be now a fight for market share. If this stage can be reached, it is likely that the product will be profitable. Depending on the nature of the product and how much the development costs were, by this stage all of the initial costs, so the research and development, should have been covered. Maintaining the product in this stage of the life cycle becomes the next issue though. Sales are likely to flatten out, and the nature of any marketing will have changed, and competition from newer products now starts to become a concern. Saturation implies all the customers who wanted to purchase the product have now done so, and therefore additional extra sales might be difficult. Think of if you are mopping up a spill in your kitchen, you use kitchen roll. Once that becomes saturated, the kitchen roll can't pick up any more water. So it's the same. Once the market is saturated, it's difficult to collect any more customers. If you think about the Mars bar or Kit Kat and Dairy Milk are still in the maturity stage because they've promoted themselves as constantly slightly changing. But these are the exceptions though. Mostly sales will generally start to tail off and start to decline towards the end of the maturity stage. Marketing of products in the maturity stage is concentrated on keeping sales within the maturity stage and avoiding them falling off. So the promotion often reminds customers of the existence of the products. So not unlike in the introduction stage, our marketing is very much informative. Promotion, in this sense, we might not be spending as much, but we're spending it in a different way to how we might have done in the growth stage. There are several ways in which the business can encourage customers to continue buying its products in the maturity stage. That's what we call extension strategies, but we'll come on to those in a second. So what are our relevant marketing strategies when we get to the maturity stage? Well, this is when we've got to try and differentiate our product, make them slightly different. So we might make slight variations to what it is our product does. So we might change the colour, change the packaging, for instance. Depending on the actual product, pricing will reflect the amount of competition in the market. However, price reductions may also be used as an extension strategy, which again we'll come on to. With an established product, any advertising will be used just to remind customers of its existence. So such advertising will be increased if newer products come into the market. Also, advertising and sales promotions could be used as extension strategies. There is the possibility of seeking new markets for the product and therefore establishing new outlets where the product can be made available. So a good example, unfortunately in this case, is cigarettes, or are cigarettes. Since it's become less socially acceptable in Western countries to smoke, tobacco companies have been targeting specifically Africa, where there is an enormous market there that they can hopefully, or they want to tap into. Okay, the final stage. In the decline stage, sales are now falling. Customers might have even lost interest in the product because newer, better alternatives, better competitors are on the market. So sales may be low, and they might be so low that there's no reason to continue to even make the product at all. In this stage, the business has to decide if it wants to offer the product at a heavily discounted price to boost sales, or whether they simply want to allow it to decline and to remove it from the market. Much will depend upon whether the business has a replacement product that is soon to be launched. So the business won't really want people to think that their product is outdated, and therefore they might allow sales to decline in one product before they introduce a newer, improved version. There will be a decline in profits, and there will be weaker cash flow. Most competitors, or more competitors, start leaving the market because of the fact that the profit is lower and cash flow is weaker. And now there's going to be a decline in capacity utilization, which also might push up unit costs. It might also mean that we can switch that capacity to alternative newer products, which are now in the introduction or the development stage. So you can see how it is like a cycle. It continues around. Okay, what are our strategies in the decline stage? Well, there's little point spending money on a product that is in decline if you're going to let it disappear from the market. So prices may be drastically reduced in order to sell off any stock that is left before a new model or a new product is launched. Sales promotions may be heavily used to sell off final stock. We might narrow our distribution so that we're not selling in as many places. We might put promotions on to keep loyal customers in the hope that they'll buy a new product that we're just about to introduce, for instance. Okay, let's look at these extension strategies then. So in order to maintain sales, extension strategies are what the business has used. So say, for instance, within the car industry, extension strategies are very common. They're used to help sell a model that will soon be replaced. So for instance, if you know that a model is soon to be launched, a new model, you probably are reluctant to buy the old model, even though that's what's on sale at the moment. You might wait until the new model comes out. But what manufacturers do is they try selling you a special edition. So it won't cost them very much more, but they might decide to put leather in, they might change the stereo, slightly change the engine, make it slightly different to make you more inclined to want to buy it. This incurs only a small cost, but it means that they can revive an older model. We might try different advertising to gain a new audience or remind the current audience of what our product does. We might reduce the price to make it attractive to more customers. We might add value. So if you think of mobile phones, about 5-6 years ago, a lot of Nokias didn't actually have video messaging. So in order to get rid of those models before they could introduce a new one, what they did was just very simply change the software so they could send video messages. Same as what I said before about the tobacco companies, we might explore new markets, so selling abroad, and even as simple as we might try to change our packaging, so brightening it up or slightly changing it. So every now and again, Kellogg's, for instance, sells their cornflakes in a foil packet, trying to make things seem a little bit different. Or music compilations around Christmas are a good example. You wouldn't necessarily buy an album of 70s music, but when it's packaged as a Christmas music compilation, a lot of people do. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people criticise product life cycle. The shape and the duration of the cycle varies. So as I said before, the shape and the duration of a Mars bar is very different to that of some merchandise around Justin Bieber, for instance. Once Justin Bieber goes out of fashion, people won't be buying his merchandise. That won't last as long as Kellogg's cornflakes have, for instance. So it could be that the product life cycle of some products are short, some of them are long. So sales in a short product life cycle might fall very quickly. So we might call that a craze product. So its popularity is intense for a very short period of time, but then it very quickly dies. It's also very difficult to recognize where you are in the product life cycle. Just by judging and looking at sales, we don't know whether those sales are going to continue to grow, in which case you're in the growth stage, or we don't know whether they're going to start to fall, in which case you're in the decline stage. It could also become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we think we're starting to decline, we might stop spending on marketing, which is obviously going to help the product to decline. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people criticize product life cycle. The shape and the duration of the cycle varies. So as I said before, the shape and the duration of a Mars bar is very different to that of some merchandise around Justin Bieber, for instance. Once Justin Bieber goes out of fashion, people won't be buying his merchandise. That won't last as long as Kellogg's cornflakes have, for instance. So it could be that the product life cycle of some products are short, some of them are long. So sales in a short product life cycle might fall very quickly. So we might call that a craze product. So its popularity is intense for a very short period of time, but then it very quickly dies. It's also very difficult to recognize where you are in the product life cycle. Just by judging and looking at sales, we don't know whether those sales are going to continue to grow, in which case you're in the growth stage, or we don't know whether they're going to start to fall, in which case you're in the decline stage. It could also become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we think we're starting to decline, we might stop spending on marketing, which is obviously going to help the product to decline.